And wait for it, we are live! Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Parsha Pearls, talking about Parshat Shemini. How very, very exciting. So as a brief, brief summary of the Parsha, right? Shemini, which means 8, refers to the 8th day after the inauguration of the Kohanim has been completed. So on the 8th day, which is really the first day for the Kohanim to begin their priestly service, so Moshe gathers all of the Jews to the Mishkan to witness the divine presence descending upon the Mishkan, and we see that Aaron starts to offer various sacrifices, and he offers the people the priestly blessing. And Moshe and Aaron bless the Jewish people, and the Shekhinah descends onto the Mishkan, and then we have the tragic incident where, and bear in mind this is opening day of the Mishkan, we see that Nadav and Avihu do something wrong, and they end up dying on opening day. Two of Aaron's sons, his eldest two sons, they die on the opening day of the Mishkan, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then a little bit later on in the Parsha, we have the laws of kashrut, the kosher animals, the non-kosher animals, the birds, the fish. That all gets talked about in this week's Parsha, and then a bit at the end about Tumah and Tahara, and how food and different utensils can contract Tumah. So that's basically a short run through of Parshat Shemini. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you all next week. So here we go. Some insights, some nuggets, some pearls, if I may, on the Parsha. Starting, of course, as we always do, with the first word, Vayehi. Says the pasuk, Vayehi bayom hashmini kara Moshe li Aaron levanav. It was on the 8th day that Moses summoned Aaron and his sons and the elders of Yisrael. So this first word, Vayehi, it is a famous statement by our sages that when you have the words Vayehi, it can connote, or it can denote, or it has a connotation, or it foreshadows a tale of woe. Chazal, the sages, say that it's contracted from two Hebrew words, vai, like oi vai, and haya, a woeful event would come to pass. So over here, the fact that our parsha starts with Vayehi, it is alluding to what will be the tragic deaths of Nadav and Avihu. So even though this should be an exciting time, the opening day of the Mishkan, and everybody is there to witness the spectacle, but the fact that it starts with Vayehi, it alludes to the tragedy which lies in store for Aaron and his sons. There are other examples of this. So in the book of Parshat, chapter 14, verse 1, if you've got a Chumash, do feel free to check it out. But in chapter 14, verse 1, the pasuk says, Vayehi bimei Amraphel melech Shinar. It was in the days of Amraphel, the king of Shinar, which is the introduction to the war of the 4 kings against the 5 kings, during which Lot was taken prisoner. So what the Midrash tells us is that the king's aim was to take Lot prisoner in order to draw Avraham into battle, so that Avraham could be slain, which would have been a big problem for us, because it would mean that we wouldn't have existed. And so therefore, says the Midrash, Vayehi brings to our attention that particular negative element of the war of the 4 kings against the 5 kings. Perhaps more famously, ladies and gentlemen, just last week we read Vayehi b'mei Achashverosh, that it was in the days of Achashverosh. The beginning of the book of Esther starts with Vayehi b'mei, and so That, of course, should be quite obvious what tragedy that was alluding to, and the attempted genocide of our people through the wicked Haman. Boo! So that's another example. So there's an interesting thing that comes about from this, which is Rabbi Ishmael, one of these sages, says that even if it's not followed by bimei, if it just says vayhi, then it also has an unfortunate connotation. So then the question was asked to him, well, hang on a minute, right at the very beginning of the Torah, vayhi occurs on numerous occasions. In fact, every day, vayhi erev, vayhi boker, yom, whatever it is. So, and not only that, but you have at the beginning, vayomer Elokim yehi or, vayehi or, that when Hashem created light, and he said, let there be light, and there was light. So, according to Rabbi Ishmael, then, this should not be a happy time. What do you mean? God's just created the world, he just created light, and you're telling me that this is not supposed to be a happy time. So Rabbi Ishmael replies that there is a sad implication for Vayehi or as well. And the implication is that mankind was never given the benefit of that light, of that or, which was created on the first day. The sources tell us that Hashem decided that there would be wicked people in the future who would be unworthy of enjoying this incredibly impressive, undiluted ore, and so we're taught that he stored that ore away, that pure divine light, and he replaced it essentially with sunlight as we would know it, and the power of ore is stored away for the righteous in the Garden of Eden. Will you just excuse me for one moment? She needs a microphone.
So she wanted something printed, but she can read it now. What time is your class finish?
The class finishes after 8 o'clock.
Okay,
So
you can do it then.
what? How?
She wants to send a picture to be printed.
Okay, I will
Need it now.
I will deal with
It's
that.
alright. So
To the millions watching on YouTube via.
it's fine. So when you finish, find the mic.
Yes, I will deal with all of that. Thank you. The truth is, Stella, if you want to take my key and go upstairs to the office, you will probably find the microphones there.
Where
It's one of those. It can be a little bit tricky, but it's one of those.
Where will I find the mic?
It will probably be on Daniel's desk. I'm sorry, Stella.
Oh, it's fine. Don't shut up.
So that is the negative connotation of Vayhi, which is the divine ore, which was stored away only to be given to the righteous in the Garden of Eden, which I think is quite fascinating. Quite an interesting way to start. And then he was asked, of course, well, hang on a minute, Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Voker, you've got Vayhi several times. So to that, Rabbi Ishmael said, well, you see, the world was not created to a point of physical absolute perfection. So the fact that the world requires improvement, the fact that human effort needs to be put in before things can be enjoyed, that, he says, is enough of a reason for Vayhi to allude to things which are not so positive and not so enjoyable. So the fact that we have to harvest crops, we have to harvest the grain, turn it into flour, turn it into dough, turn it into bread, that level of work and perfection that we need to put into the world to be able to bring things into being, that, he says, is how you would then explain the other occurrences of Vayhi throughout the story of creation. So there we go, folks. That is our first Parsha Pearl of the evening. We should have like a little jingle that goes like or whatever, as you move into the next one. Note to self, tell Rabbi Feldman to get jingle for Parsha Pearls. Okay, so the next idea that I shall share with you, all being well, goes like this. So we've got our first verse, and as we said at the beginning, Vayehi Bayom Hashmini is a bit of a strange way to refer to the first day of the Mishkan. Surely it should be, and it was on the first day Yeah, but it's not. It's not. It's the 8th day. And the reason, says Rav David Feinstein, is because the preparation is just as important as the actual day itself, which is a lesson that doesn't just apply to the Mishkan, but it applies to everything, and it applies to all of us. So we tend to operate on the premise that the results are the most important thing. Everything is the world is results driven, and yet our Parsha comes along at the beginning to tell us that the 7-day period of preparation was an indispensable part of the process, right? So there's a message for life, which is that Judaism, Hashem rewards the efforts. That's number one. We are an effort-based religion. Yeah, there's a famous statement, a famous phrase that appears in the Gemara, which is Rahmana Liba Bai, that Hashem desires our heart. He doesn't just want us to tick boxes. He wants us to actually put something behind our actions. And that doesn't come easily. That comes with practice, and it comes with preparation, and it comes with it comes with the passage of time. So so in Judaism, we will always say that the process and the preparation and the effort and the heart that goes into the things that we do is really what is so vitally important to the mitzvot that we do. Nothing really. There are very few mitzvahs which come easily and come naturally. To get good at them, for want of a better word, it takes practice and it takes preparation as well. If we show up to shul expecting to open a siddur and keep up with the service on day one, we're going to be in for a disappointment. The only way that we're really going to feel like we have connected with the prayer service is if we're spending time outside of shul, getting familiar with the siddur, learning how to read Hebrew, learning how to become familiar with the translation of the words. All of that is what really prepares you to then actually perform that mitzvah in a way that you will find meaningful. That's all part of the preparation. That's all part of the process. And that receives reward, and that receives significance in Judaism. We will have talked in Cafe Tefillah in the past about this idea that we learned from Masechet Brachot, that the pious people of yesteryear would take an hour to prepare for prayer, an hour to pray, and an hour to wind down afterwards, right? So I'm not saying that is really an achievable method of praying, but the point is that the way in which we treat the mitzvot that we do, and it's not just prayer, it's anything that we do, we receive reward for the effort, we receive reward for the toil. And this, by the way, I would assume, is why for that year before a child turns bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, they already start to do a lot of the mitzvot that they're going to do when they become 12 or 13. We're preparing them so that when they get to those ages, they are ready to go. The training wheels are off now because they will have that level of familiarity. That's why education in Judaism is of such importance. It's why, as a people, we will have always made sure that there should be a level of a high level of literacy across the whole nation, because it is of vital importance that we know what we're doing and we understand what we're doing and that we put the effort into what we're doing. And Vayihi Bayom Shemini, the fact that it starts on day 8 rather than on day 1, emphasizes that point. That day 8, even though it's day 1, is a build-up, is a culmination, is a climax of all of the effort and all of the investment and all of the toil and all of the hours and all of the time that has been put in to reaching that significant point. So yeah, there you go. Jingle, please. Okie dokie. So we move on to chapter 9, verse 6. So we've got the priestly service, which is beginning, and says Moshe in this verse, Vayome Moshe ze hadavar asher tziva Hashem ta'asu. Moses says, this is the thing that Hashem has commanded you to do. Vayera aleichem kavod Hashem. Then the glory of Hashem will appear to you. And a wonderful idea of the Orach Chaim, which I heard from Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg in America. He says, there are people who go through life and they say, first I want to see Hashem, let me know that he's there, and then I'll do the mitzvot, then I'll go to shul, then I'll keep Shabbat, then I'll put on tefillin. So the Orach Chaim says an amazing thing from this verse, right? Moshe says, this is the thing that Hashem has commanded you to do, V'yera aleichem kavod Hashem, and then you will see the glory of Hashem. He says it's the wrong way around, people. First you have to do the things, and then you will find God very much apparent and very much present in your life, which is completely counterintuitive to a lot of to the way that a lot of people lead their lives. First they think, I need to see Hashem has to do something for me. Once he does something for me, then I'll do something for him. And it's almost like this quid pro quo, put the coin in the cash machine, in the Coke machine, and I'll do something for him and he'll do something for me. It's not really the way it works, unfortunately. And the Orach Chaim says is that this message that Moses is teaching, first you do what you're supposed to do, and trust me, says Moses, you will see Hashem in your life, and you will see this time and time again that this is the experience that a lot of people have. The more that they delve into Judaism, the more that they actually dive into the mitzvot, the more that they actually commit, you will see that people who are, aflame, on fire with their Jewish passion, with their Jewish pride, with their Jewish observance, their Jewish activities, they will start, or they will report to you that they feel the divine presence in their lives, which is an amazing thing. So nice little nugget there from the Orach Chaim. So moving on, let's go to the next verse there, chapter 9, verse 7. Vayomem Moshe el Aharon, Moshe says to Aaron, Karav el hamizbeach, come Aaron, come near to the altar, va'aseh et chatatcha, and offer up your sin offering, ve'et olatecha, and your olah, your elevation, your fully consumed offering, ve'chaper ba'adcha va'adam, and provide atonement for yourself and for the people, va'aseh et korban ha'am ve'chaper ba'adam kasher tzivah Hashem, and then perform the avodah, the service for the people's offering, get atonement for them as Hashem has commanded. So this is an amazing moment. We have to pay attention to this. It's been a week of preparation for the Mishkan. It is day 8, which is really day 1 of the Mishkan. Or should I say it's day 1, which is really day 8 of the Mishkan. And Aaron HaKohen is there in the Mishkan. The whole nation is watching. And he has to go and offer up these sacrifices. Yeah? And Aaron HaKohen, all of a sudden, figuratively, so to speak, symbolically, whatever it is, takes stock of where he is. And he's realizing, I've got here an egel. I've got here a calf. I've got here a mizbeach. I've got here an altar with the karnei mizbeach, with the horns of the altar. Everything that's around me right now is just reminding me of the Egel Hazahav, of the golden calf. And he almost takes stock. You can almost picture him taking stock and saying, like, this is way off, guys. I've got millions of people out there watching me. All eyes are on me at this point in time. But who am I? I'm the guy that very, very recently, few months ago, whatever it was, I was standing there while the nation wanted to create this golden calf. And so we're taught that one of the things that Moshe is doing in this verse when he says, come to the Mizbeach, Karav el Mizbeach, is that he's almost having to encourage Aaron to see the situation through a different pair of eyes, through a different pair of lenses. Because he's thinking to himself, perhaps, I shouldn't be doing this. The Chet HaEgel happened on my watch. And now you want me to bring an Egel. You want me to bring a calf. And you want me to stand in front of this Mizmeach, which reminds me of the calf. And how's that going to work? And so there's an amazing idea that emerges from this very verse, which is that when Hashem wants you to be in a certain place and he wants you to do something, then you can be assured that he thinks you're up for that job and he thinks you're up for that responsibility. So Moshe is kind of saying to Aaron, Karav el Mizbeach, don't worry about it. You are the man that Hashem has chosen to be the one who is going to be the representative of the Jewish people. Right, Rashi says on these words, Karav el Mizbeach, Shahaya Aharon Bush. He was embarrassed. V'yeran, he was afraid. Legeshet, he was afraid to approach the Mizbeach. Amalo Moshe, lama ata bosh? Why are you embarrassed? And then he says, Lekach nivcharta. For this you were chosen. Right? Do not worry. The fact that Hashem is commanding you and you only to be the one to officiate at this time, don't worry about it. That's where you need to be. That's the skill, that is the talent, that is the koach, that is the potential that Hashem has in store for you. But there's a couple of things that we can appreciate from here. Number one is that someone who believes that they are the be-all and end-all, someone who believes that they deserve the limelight, that they deserve the positions of leadership, Aaron is kind of teaching us a lesson as well. You know, he's an experienced guy. He's been around the block. He knows that he's an important figure in the Jewish people. But even he had imposter syndrome. Even he had this feeling of like, should I really be the one that should be put on this pedestal and given this responsibility? And it's Moshe that has to remind him, like, Lekach nivcharta, you've been chosen for this. Don't worry, Hashem has got your back. Which is an amazing example of how to be a leader. Because if we have leaders who go through life and who think that they are the be-all and end-all, and they deserve the power and they deserve the position, and everyone has to look up to them, they're missing something. And that, I think, is what Aaron is trying to emphasize here and trying to teach us as well, that we turn to leaders. We want our leaders to also be human and to also be vulnerable and to realize that if they're in these positions, they've been put in these positions for a reason. Just 1 second, please.
Sorry, these didn't work, and I was just seeing if you were finishing before I interrupted you again, but she can't start until she's got a mic.
She can't start until she's got a mic. Okay, we are going to pause for just 1 moment, and David Menashe is going to entertain you with some light commercial music.
Okay, I'm juggling here. I can see the balls, they're invisible, but drop one there. That's all I can do. Talking of leaders, our leader is here. Mr.
Oh, goodness.
Good evening.
What timing.
Yes, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
It's all about delegating
Yeah, is that?
and just stepping forward when you need to. Being humble.
Some people are good at delegating, some people are not.
Yeah,
I'm not very good at it myself.
I'm not brilliant.
It's a failing, I guess. Is it
Uh,
because we're control freaks or whatever? I don't know.
No, quite the opposite. I prefer, someone takes responsibility, and you just step back and let them own it and take the glory.
Yeah, but I'm talking about
take the benefit, take the ownership.
in life, though, I mean, as in my job as a finance director, or whatever, like, you know, I can't just say to somebody else, yeah, you fill in the back return this quarter, and I'm sure
Yes, you can.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yes, you can, and you check it.
Maybe I can. Yeah. Well, I'll see.
And we're back. Welcome to Parsha Pearls, part duh. Okay, so so we were just finishing that point.
Sorry, can I just ask you about what you were just talking about?
Yeah.
Is there an official Jewish concept that Hashem doesn't give you anything you can't deal with?
Is there an official Jewish concept that Hashem doesn't give you a challenge that you can't deal with?
Yes, because that sort of fits in with what you were saying before at the beginning of this bit, as far as I can see.
I would say that's pretty on the nose.
And does that come from an official source?
Yes, Wendy.
No, because I don't.
Are you asking me what that official source is? Oh, that's different. Oh, well, yeah. Good question. Good question. The question is it from one source, or is it from a culmination of several different sources and examples and precedents? And I don't have a good answer for you on one leg. But come tomorrow to Lunch and Learn, and I will to have an answer for you.
What time is it?
12 o'clock on Thursday. Okay. I'll tell you for why, because we are actually going to be talking tomorrow about the Jewish approach to suffering, because it comes up in our Mishnah in Pirkei Avot where we're up to. So
okay.
It's very much what we're going to be on. So hopefully by then I'll have prepared that share, and I might have an answer for you. So yeah. Let's jingle please. So that was that one. Yeah, Krovel Amizbech. Very good. So let's jump a little bit further into the Parsha. Can you believe this, guys? Get ready for this. We're going past the first page. Not only that, but we're going past the second page. We're going to jump all the way to the part of the Parsha that talks about kashrut, and a few interesting and intriguing ideas about kashrut. It's amazingly powerful stuff. This is all basically from a rabbi who I really love listening to called Y.Y. Jacobson, and he says some incredible things and some incredibly Hasidic insights into kashrut and into some of these different signs that we have. So the Pasuk says in regards to the fish. What does it say in regards to the fish? In chapter 11, verse 9, of all of these things you can eat that swim in the sea, in the water. Kol asher lo snapir v'kaskeses. What are the two signs that we need to be able to say that a fish is kosher? What do we need? Louder, Alison, louder!
Fins and scales and mozzarella.
Oh, thank God our local Jewish caterer was able to, our local kosher caterer was able to identify. Fins and scales, snapir v'kaskeses. Kol asher lo snapir v'kaskeses b'mayim, bayamim uvanachalim otam tochelu. So as long as it's got fins and scales in the water and in the seas and in the rivers, so then you're going to be able to eat them. And anything that doesn't have snapir v'kaskeses, anything that does not have fins and scales, they are going to be abominable to you. And then it says, anything that doesn't have fins and scales is going to be sheketz. It's going to be an abomination. It's going to be terrible for you to eat these things. And the Mishnah teaches us, where's the Mishnah? The Mishnah is in Masechet Nida. The Mishnah teaches us all fish that have scales also have fins, but there will be fish that have fins but do not have scales. So this is an interesting insight that any fish, says the Mishnah, that has got scales, you will know that it has fins. There is no such thing in this world as a fish that has scales but no fins, says the Mishnah. Quite an ambitious statement, considering that the authors of the Mishnah will not have seen every species of fish in the entire planet, especially when you consider the fact that the sea goes hundreds and hundreds of meters below the surface. And yet the Torah can confidently tell us that if a fish has scales, you can be sure that it is kosher because it will also have fins. You will never find a fish that has scales but no fins. Quite an ambitious claim. But anyway, says Rabbi Jacobson, the fins and the scales represent two different ways of looking at the world. Right? You've got the scales, which is this thick layer of skin that protects the fish. It helps ward off external dangers. It helps protect them from sudden changes in temperature and water pressure or other attacking fish. Scales, he says, are the armor that protects the body of the fish. Fins, on the other hand, are the propellers. They are the limbs that help the fish swim through the water, that help the fish make progress and go in different directions and move through the water. And so he says that these two simanim, these two different signs of a fish, represent two different ways that you can look at Judaism. And he says that you can look at Judaism through the eyes of the scales, that in order to survive as Jews, you have to have a thick skin, you have to develop the scales, you have to protect yourself from the external influences, you have to cut yourself off from the rest of the world. Anything that is modern, anything that is progress, that is all dangerous because you have to have your armor, you have to have your scales on you if you want to be able to succeed in Judaism. The other way of looking at it is as a Judaism of fins, that you have to be able to swim through the currents of time. You have to immerse yourself into the environment around you, and you have to make sure that things are always moving and things are always different and things are always novel and unique and new and etc., and fresh. So what is the right way to navigate your way through Judaism? Asks Rabbi Jacobson. Should you be the insular, isolated scales, or should you be the modern, new, fresh fins? And the answer is, says David Menashe, both. You have to be both. To be a kosher fish, to be a well-rounded Jewish individual, you have to have scales and you have to have fins. You have to be comfortable and confident in your heritage and knowing the importance of maintaining a strong Jewish identity that has withstood the decades of oppression and the decades of everything that as a people we've had to suffer throughout our history. But you also have to have fins. You also have to be able to navigate through larger society and be able to swim and change in different directions, but nonetheless you're still remaining attached and you are still keeping your armor on, which is a beautiful idea. And it's interesting because if we remember what our Mishnah said that all fish that have scales will also have fins, but not all fish that have fins will have scales. And so if we wanted to think esoterically about this idea and connect it to what we've been talking about, then we will come to a realization that if you're just fins, if your emphasis, if your focus, if the primary agenda is the fins, is how do I fit Judaism into all the different directions that I want to be able to go, then there's not going to be a guarantee that the scales are going to be there. There's not going to be a guarantee that it's going to endure, that it's going to survive, that it's going to be transmissible, that it's going to maintain itself beyond a certain point. There's no guarantee that it's going to remain and retain its authenticity, which the scales represent. Whereas if you are faithful to the scales, if you are faithful to the tradition, if you are faithful to the heritage, if you are faithful to the authority of our sages and of our Torah and of the Talmud, then whatever fins you put on you, you're going to remain a kosher fish. But that's not guaranteed if you come at it from the other way around, trying to fit Torah into whatever it is that you want it to say. You know, like we joked at Purim. Paul, you missed this, unfortunately, and Henry, and possibly Wendy, and possibly Alice, and David. I don't know, were you there? But I did this Purim spiel. Hands up if you heard the Purim spiel. None of you heard the Purim spiel, so I'll have to send it to you. So Rabbi Lister and I, as for our Purim spiel, before the entertainment, we did kind of fake announcements. Yeah, and one of the announcements that we did was that we've been inundated with emails and texts and all the different questions from people in the community, and therefore we've developed an app which is going to allow people to put in the answer that they want to hear, and then it's going to tell them all the rabbis that say it. So if you're a Judaism of fins, where you're just trying to get the answer that you want, then you're going to end up without scales. You're going to end up losing that connection and losing that authenticity. Have we got time for one more? Got time for one. Bing! So another idea from Rabbi Jacobson, which no, actually this one isn't. Sorry, this one is from my brother-in-law's chavruta, Rabbi Salem. So he talks about one of the fish that is mentioned in the. Sorry, it's not a fish at all. In fact, is it? No, it's a bird. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? It's a bird. So the verse says in chapter 11, verse 19, where it lists the different forbidden birds. This is quite interesting, anyway, guys. That we have rules for animals: chew the cud, split hooves. We have rules for fish. Scales and fins, but for the birds it tells us the names of the forbidden birds, and it says in verse 19 ve'et hachasidah, that one of the forbidden birds is called a chasidah. And our rabbis tell us chasidah, why is it called a chasidah? Says Rashi, she'oseh chasidut im chevroteha b'mezonot. The reason is because it shows kindness, it shows chesed, and it provides food for its neighbor. That seems quite impressive, don't you think? We have a whole sect of Jews called Hasidim. They live their life trying to be pious, trying to be full of chesed, right? And over here we have a bird which is called the Chasidah, and the Torah is telling us, don't you dare put that in your mouth. Well, why not? If you are what you eat, why do we not want to eat this thing? Yeah, a chasidah is a kind species. It should be praiseworthy. It should be a nice quality. I should want to eat chasidah because then I will also be a nice person. But the answer is that the chasidah is only kind to its own species, to its own people. So yes, it does chesed. Yes, it provides food, but it only provides food to people who look and sound and live like them. And that, we are taught, is not the Torah's definition of kindness, not the Torah's definition of chesed that we should be looking to emulate. Rather, we should be looking to be kind to everybody indiscriminately, whether we know them, whether we don't know them, whether we've come across them, whether we haven't come across them, whether they're English, whether they're French, whether they're Ukrainian. Whatever the case, whatever the identity, whatever the level, whatever we think of them, the trait of kindness that we are looking to reach for is indiscriminate. And that is why the Torah tells us we cannot eat the chasidah, because you are what you eat, but you don't want to be like that. We don't want to be only kind to the people who look like us, who talk like us, who live like us. Anything more than me is a fanatic, and anything less than me is a goy. That's not where we're supposed to operate. That's not where we're supposed to live our lives. We're supposed to extend ourselves upwards and downwards. It's not even fair to call it a scale of up and down, but you get the idea. So that, I think, is a beautiful idea as well. Time for one more. Yeah, I can't remember what time we go to, but let's go for one more. So this is genuinely another idea from Rabbi Jacobson, Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. The question is that we have to ask ourselves is, where have I left my notes about it? Here we go. So there's another animal, there's another bird that we're not allowed to eat. And in the list of the non-kosher birds, we are taught in verse 14, ve'et hada'a ve'et ha'aya lamina. We're not allowed to eat the da'a. We're not allowed to eat the ayah. And I think in Devarim, it gives it a name as well. In chapter 14, verse 13. Yeah. So when the list of non-kosher birds is repeated, so the Torah in Parshat Re'eh says, V'hara'a ve'et ha'aya v'hadaya lamina. These three names, Ra'a, Aya, and Daya. And over here we have, where was it? Lost it again. Where was it? Da'ava Aya. Right? So it's weird that we have one name in one list and another name in another list. But Chazal teach us that actually these are all the same bird. These are all just different names for the same species. It seems to be possibly the vulture or the kite. That's what this Ra'a, Aya, Daya creature is. It might be a vulture, it might be a hawk, it might be the kite. Either way, it is a predatory bird and we're not allowed to eat it. Yeah? But then, why do we need three names for the same bird? So, Ra'a comes from the word to see, ro'eh. Daya comes from the verb to fly or to glide, and Ayah comes from the verb to wail, to scream, or to cry. But here's one of the amazing things that we learn about this bird. The Talmud teaches us that Rabbi Avahu says, Ra'a zo'aya. Ra'a is the same bird as Ayah. V'lama nikra shma Ra'a. Why does the Torah call it a Ra'a? Then the Gemara answers, Rabbi Avahu answers, Shero'eh bioter. It sees extremely well. It sees extremely well. And then it quotes a verse from the book of Job. There is a path which no bird of prey knows and which the kite's eye has not seen, referring to this Ra'a, the ayin of the sort of the ayah. And the Gemara goes on to say that this bird has the ability to be standing in Babel, to be standing in Babylon, and because of its extremely acute sight, it is able to see a carcass in Eretz Yisrael. It's able to see a carcass in the land of Israel. Now that's some achievement. Now we know that birds of prey can see for many, many miles, but the Gemara is saying something very, very deep over here, which Rabbi Jacobson draws out, right? Because we're talking about between Babylon and Israel, we're talking about, hundreds and hundreds of miles. So it's not just trying to say that this bird has extremely good vision, which birds of prey really do have extremely good abilities to see great distances. But there's a message that's coming out from here. The fact that this bird can stand in Babylon, can stand in Bavel, and can see a carcass all the way in Israel teaches us a fundamental lesson. And this perhaps is why, or one of the reasons why, we can't eat this bird. And what Rabbi Jacobson says is that there can be a characteristic, a trait that exists in people, that you can stand wherever you are. You can stand in Chutz La'aretz, let's say, and you look at Israel, and all you can see is carcasses. All you can see is the bad that exists in Israel. And this is not a good trait. And this is perhaps what the Gemara is trying to teach us, is that it's all well and good. You stand in your comforts, you live in your lap of luxury, and when you look at Israel, or when you look at the Jewish people, all you can see is the bad. That is not a good trait to emulate. We are encouraged to see the greatness and the goodness that exists in us and that exists in the Jewish people. We shouldn't be people who stand with whatever challenges in our lives that we might face, but when we look at everyone else, we're negative, we're judgmental. We only see the bad. We only see the carcass, as it were, the figurative carcass, the negative side. That we look and we criticize, and we see the worst in everybody else, and we think that everybody has an agenda and everybody has a problem, and we scrutinize everyone and we criticize everyone and we judge everyone. This is not a good way to operate, and this is not a good trait to emulate, but it is the trait that perhaps emerges through the teachings of Chazal, through the teachings of our sources, where we see this bird which we're not allowed to eat. Why? Because it has the ability, wherever it is, to just see carcasses, to just see the bad, to just see the prey, to just be looking for something to latch onto, to seize its talons into, and to push it down and to squeeze the life out of it. That is not a good way to live. That is not a good character trait to emulate. So with that, we say, that is the end of this week's Parsha Pearls. I do hope you've enjoyed the show. And normal service, please God, will be resumed next week with the return of Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lister. But for now, to all those watching on Zoom and on YouTube and on Facebook, we wish you a very good night and see you again on Parsha Pearls.